Well, hello there. It's been a little bit, hasn't it? My name is Sandy, and I'm going to present to you something that I have found pretty interesting for at least the past couple months. So, video games. It's something that has made up quite the majority of my content. Honestly, just playing games, streaming them.
Oh, get him. And then heal.
Oh yeah. Get buddy. And even trashing on abysmal takes on video games.
They're apparently trying to claim that enhancing the character creation system, is apparently actually removing features somehow.
This has pretty much formed, well, this entire channel that you're currently watching right now. However, I think there's one aspect that I really haven't talked about, and it's a bit of a lost era of video games, and that is, of course, the lost era of genuinely insane advertisement. See, today we still have ads for video games and consoles, with a lot of these ads mainly just being trailers displaying cinematics and gameplay of upcoming games to at least kind of build up hype, at least for the most part. And while these ads are effective, I mean, I'm excited for a few games this year, like Elden Ring Night Rain, The Witcher 4, GTA 6, and especially Doom the Dark Ages, and all of those are definitely on the top of my list, as well as many others lists of extremely hyped games for this year, and, for good reason too. They look absolutely fantastic. And while it's wild how we went from games that look like this and this, to games that now look like this, and even this, one thing that we ended up losing with the advancement of gaming technology is, of course, the absolutely batshit insane ads that were used in the early years and seemingly ended around the early to mid 2010s. And that's what I'm here to present. While I may not have been around and especially didn't even know what a video game was during this time, I've fallen down a bit of a rabbit hole recently of looking at insane methods of video game advertisement. And I have a bit of a collection here, pretty much ads ranging from the cool to the edgy to the trying way too hard to the confusing and all the way to ads that I deemed to almost be, shall we say, eldritch in nature. I have quite a bit to cover within this particular video, and hopefully you'll find this almost as interesting as I did. So strap in, relax, grab some popcorn and a drink, and prepare for the lost art of insane video game ads. Also, on a bit of a side note, if this video ends up coming out around like the 10th, happy birthday to me. But anyways, let's go. I believe that the best way to start a video like this is with a bit of an appetizer of ads that I think are pretty damn cool, but are still just unusual enough to land on this video at all. I think the best example to give here to start this entire segment off is, of course, this Japanese ad for the first Devil May Cry. Now, yes, it's pretty weird. These two clearly just got out of some sort of either marriage or prom, and the woman in a fit of anger decides to fucking style on her presumed partner with a bouquet of flowers. Now, obvious joke about this ad predicting Vari's bouquet 21 years before it was likely even a concept aside, this ad is cool because it somewhat perfectly portrays Devil May Cry's nature of styling on your enemies in very unconventional ways. Now, I may not be sure about a flower bundle weapon being in the original DMC, but I might have to check on that one, but I think you can agree with my judgment on this one being pretty fucking cool. Up next, we have this ad for the game Palamedes, which apparently while looking for this specific ad, I discovered that it's also the name of a character from Greek mythology. What does this have to do with gaming? Not much, really. I just think it's funny to show off a statue of some Greek dude that may or may not have actually existed. But back on the topic of the actual ad, we have our boy Brad going from boring nerd to radical dude after playing the NES classic in question. Now, despite the fact that the game looks like this, and it's a slight misrepresentation of the game, I just found this concentrated 90s energy just too cool to not show off here just right at the start. Probably another really cool magazine ad, in my personal opinion, is this one for the original Mortal Kombat. Now, while it may have been controversial to show children getting their shit kicked in by literal thunder gods back in the day, I find it cool that it's a perfect showcase of Mortal Kombat's history of using digitized actors for their fighters. At least back in the classic era, before they moved into 3D, I should say. But let's quickly go back to the television for a minute. One game that really had a cool ad campaign was actually Ratchet & Clank in the US, at the very least. For the original Ratchet & Clank, as well as the PlayStation Portable port, they had these ads that showed off real-life weapon demonstrations. And while it is weird to have a guy go from sucking face to sucking an Arby's roast beef sandwich, my favorite of the bunch is their showcase of the inflatable decoy.
That is Corey. He's helping us with our inflatable decoy test for Ratchet and Clank.
Now, while I was gathering these ads, this was one of the few that I openly busted out laughing at, and I guarantee you probably did too. I mean, the fact that someone went from 0 to 60 upon seeing what they thought was a 12-year-old in the middle of the neighborhood and ran the fucker over is just a hilarious visual, and I think you can agree with me here. But another funny Ratchet & Clank ad is for Ratchet & Clank Deadlocked, where these robots go full Happy Gilmore and fucking obliterate someone's golf cart with a golf ball. You know, I genuinely think that ad just speaks for itself. But one ad campaign that I genuinely find cool is the ones for the Sega.
And if you thought that you weren't going to have someone with an actual marketing degree who spent years and a lot of money to get it, not weigh in on this conversation, you owe Sanity $5. Yeah, we've talked about this for a while, but I'm one of the people that's on the stream that's always doing like the research and stuff because, well, that's what I do, technically. Because I actually do have a marketing degree, so I can actually provide some more interesting insights into specific parts of like marketing material, or at least I think I can. So I decided to hop in on some of the stuff here. We're going to start with general gaming things, but my section more or less includes general gaming with Nintendo, as well as a few other ones. So, yeah. But we'll start off with, of course, with some of the more interesting early 90s or 80s commercials that come from magazines and things like that. But of course we have this thing called for the video jukebox, which, by God, the video jukebox VJ is talking about having all these Atari games stuck in your brain, and with people talking about things getting stuck in your brain now, like a video chip that Elon wants to like put into your skull for some reason, like that's just really funny to me that this was like during the 80s. It looks very weird. But of course, there's also these Blockbuster ads that I was also looking into. One where they're talking about them being like shoes, where it's video games are like high tops. The new ones are cool, but after a while, they start to stink. Which, I mean, I guess becomes a little bit more relevant the more you think about it, but sometimes they just stink right out of the box for whatever reason. It's a very weird analogy, but even more weird analogy is this one where apparently video games are like underwear. You get attached to the good ones, but eventually you have to change them. Which, some people say no, some people say yes, other people are just wearing the same underwear and they wear them out until there's nothing. So, yeah, not really just the weirdest thing in the world, but definitely ones where you look at it and you're like, that's strange. But also, for this section, I really wanted to talk about one particular commercial. This commercial is Pitfall for the Atari 2600 that includes, it's not really cursed or anything, but is very much including a very interesting person.
Just last night, I was lost in the jungle with Pitfall Harry, surrounded by giant scorpions and man-eating crocodiles.
Well, Harry and I just grabbed the van, swung through the trees, and over the tar pits and found the jungle treasure. It was really neat.
If you haven't met Pitfall Harry, you're missing the year's most incredible video game adventure. Pitfall for the Atari 2600 and in television.
Since I met Pitfall Harry, no other man will do.
Pitfall, designed by David Crane for Activision.
That's right. You just saw Child Jack Black, or Mr. I Am Steve himself, all the way back in the 80s. I cannot fathom how hilarious this is, at least in terms of, like, knowing stuff, but it is wild to me that he had his first, like, billing in an Atari 2600 Activision Pitfall commercial. Like, again, not strange, not weird, just, like, really fucking cool. I can't not mention that there's a Jack Black commercial that has that. It's wild. Just wild. But moving on to the next section, we're going to be talking about, like, Sega and Nintendo. Now, obviously, we've heard of Nintendo and how Nintendo has had a lot of very interesting ads, but they're a very wholesome company, so obviously, none of their ads would be anything short of just happy and wholesome and lovely commercial.
We challenge all players.
Oh.
You cannot beat us.
That's right, we're in the early 90s, where everything just wanted to have to be somewhat horrifying. But we get a little ahead of ourselves. We're going to be talking, of course, firstly about Sega Saturn. Well, Sega's infamy with the Sega Saturn. Now, the Sega Saturn was the, like, mascot for the Sega Saturn. Sega Saturn being one of the failed systems that failed everywhere outside of Japan, from what I could fathom. But the interesting thing is, like, Sega Saturn was essentially, like, the Japanese equivalent of our Chuck Norris. And I mean that in, like, the most highest compliment in the world. Some of his, like, more interesting things was, in most, if not all of the commercials, he would end up beating up a whole bunch of people by, like, throwing them around and stuff, and because they weren't playing Saturn. This was back during the days when things such as, like, the whole domestic abuse poster that Sanity probably talked about at some point, really kind of showed the thing of the times, but this one was just really funny and was very comedic. Again, you also have to remember, this was very Japanese, but some of his other things that included, other than him, like, facing off against stuff, was him, basically fulfilling every gamer's dream and dating, like, a video game character. I think it was Sakura from, like, the Final Fantasy series or something, or maybe Dynasty Warriors. I don't know where it specifically was. I couldn't find where that was. But he did have a relationship, a very functional one, too, and they loved each other very much. The climax to his most amazing adventure is that he stopped a Nintendo-branded nuke from hitting the Sega Tower. I'm not making this up. Like, I am legit serious. There was a nuke that Nintendo fired in one of their commercials at Sega's tower, but so Sega, like, grabbed it and stopped it on, like, the pane of glass and then redirected it so it went up into the sky and blew up with him attached to it still. That is fucking awesome. Yeah, and you'd think that he would have died, but no, obviously there was, like, a little shooting star at the end where people were like, I wonder where he's going to appear next. So, he was actually originally made in 1997, so he's been running for a long time, and they've even had some, like, a lot of their advertising end up, even to today, in 2020. Yes, really, in 2020. There was a follow-up commercial. This was something that I found on Wikipedia someplace. So I don't know if people are going to find this, but in 2020, they made, like, a follow-up for their 60th anniversary that follows not Sega Saturn himself, but his son. So he not only was in a relationship with Sakura, or whoever he was in a relationship from back in that time, but he also had a child, which, that is fucking awesome. And I love it. But then there's also a few other appearances that I managed to look up along here, where one, he made an appearance in the Sega, in a Sonic the Hedgehog comic, volume 269. Nice. And made also an appearance in a different Dreamcast game, and probably a few others, but the one that was called out in the Wikipedia article that I looked this up at was called Rent-A-Hero 1. He wasn't actually a playable character, he was more of just, like, a mentor that would come at you for some reason. But it's really cool to me to see that, obviously this is just so fucking stupid, but, like, the best appearance of Sega Saturn was that he made a real-life appearance at a concert that was sponsored by Sega with, like, the producer of the company at the time, and it was, oh my god, that is so hilarious that they actually got maybe either the actor or someone who looked like the actor to appear at the concert. It's so strange, but I fucking love that. But yeah, so they also had, like, very regular ads other than Sega Saturn. For example, Sega would always run the Genesis Sega does what Nintendo don't. That's one. It's the meme. It's also, like, the meme that got in, like, the Genesis what Nintendo Genesis, which we'll get into that a bit in a little bit. But yeah, Sega Saturn and Sega. By God, what a strange but awesome mascot. I love it. But moving on from Sega to Sanshiro and his epic, amazing journey, we get a few more things from Nintendo, just to see the whole console war thing kind of starting here. Where there is one ad where they literally quoted God. So, yeah. This one was from the Nintendo 64 era, and I'm sorry, I can't not show an ad for a Nintendo that was, like, super weird, but also just, like, it's a quote from God. Like, what the fuck? It's really funny, and obviously this was before God decided to go off and play Buckshot Roulette, so, you know. But then there's also this one for the Power Glove, which, other than it being for the Power Glove, this one was more of a get a grip on the 90s, and took up like 2 pages in this whole thing, and I look at it, I'm not sure if it was like the actual full-on ad, or if this is just a meme ad or something, but when you like think about it, get a grip on the 90s is a little bit more dirty than you think it does. And also the fact that they're like, the positioning of the hand, like the more you look at it and the more that you think about the actual implementation of this, the more you realize how bad it is. Just yikes. Okay, we're gonna move on. But obviously, the climax of the thing is the We Are Nintendo campaign. I showed this a bit at the beginning of this, and Sandy will probably talk more about this going forward. We Are Nintendo had something even scarier than most horror movies today have. Early 90s CGI. That's right, baby. They had like so many of these, like not even so many of these, but it's just like the one ad where it is like really just, by today's standards, this CGI looks the worst you could possibly ever have it. But at the same time, it has some weird charm to it. And honestly, that's probably the best, but also like terrifying. But speaking of terrifying the children, other than that amazing piece of media, we also have one where they decided to put them in a trash compactor.
Hey, little buddy, want a ride?
Sure.
Yeah, whatever. I'll be right back. Where can you catch all 150 Pokemon? On your Game Boy, that's where. Pokemon for Game Boy is here. With both packs, you can catch them all. Games and systems will...
Yeah, you saw that right. They're in a, like, bus in a trash compactor. This was for the original, I think, red and blue cartridges of the Pokemon Game Boy game. I think Pokemon originally came out on Game Boy, but regardless, the whole Pokemon craze kind of was a huge thing. But imagine seeing this as a kid, where it's like this crazy bus driver driving along, picking up all these cute little Pokemon, and then drives into a dump and then just gets them completely smashed. It's hilarious. I know that like a couple people have probably talked about this, including, I think, Nostalgia Critic, but I think that this would have traumatized so many kids in that time. But it's just, god damn, that's hilarious. But I wanted to add something a little new to the conversation, and that being that there was an ad for Burger King and Pokemon where it was a recall for them being a choking hazard, which that's really good, and I'm going to put my faith right there in those companies. This was just, it's just strange. It also looks like if you were to replace some of the audio and the like lettering and stuff, it would kind of look like an adopt a Pokemon thing. In-universe adopt a Pokemon thing. Like, there are millions of Pokemon out there that do not have actual homes and stuff. Please support us and adopt a Pokemon. Like, that's just really fucking funny to me. I don't know why. But obviously, there was a little bit more to this than in the Nintendo section that I wanted to talk about. And this is a whole series of commercials, so this just decides to have its own little section within the Nintendo section, because obviously there was a Zelda rap. Not one, but 3. We'll get into that. I just find it really funny how, like, there was a number of Zelda raps for it. And it was a weird thing in the 90s where Nintendo was trying to be hip and with it. But yeah, obviously in the first commercial, there was this Zelda rap.
Did you see the latest Nintendo newsletter?
Whoa, nice graphics. I'd like to get my hands on that game.
You mean you haven't played it yet? We can play it on my Nintendo Entertainment System. It's the Legend of Zelda, and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad. Octoroks, Tech-Techs, Levers, too. But with your help, our hero pulls through. Yeah, go Link, yeah, get Zelda. Awesome. Intense.
The Nintendo Entertainment System. Your parents help you hook it up. The Legend of Zelda sold separate.
Yeah, you can kind of tell where this whole thing is coming from. But obviously, like, I can't not call this thing out because at that first, like, 33 to 4 second mark where he's just, like, showing this, like, Nintendo Power magazine, and he's like, whoa, look at that shit. And it's like an 8-bit game for today's standards. But he kind of looked like it, and like it was, he had gotten a Playboy magazine, which is really funny. And also that acting is just peak acting for that. But just, by God, the fact that there was a Zelda rap just baffles me. Not only one, but the second one was also the Zelda rap as well, where this was like the more famous one where it was having to do with that. But obviously speaking, this just makes no sense when you think about it, because obviously it's Zelda, a medieval sort of thing that does not have much, but so obviously in its hometown of Japan, this would probably be like having much more respect than that, because these were all American ads and there was no such thing as a Zelda rap in... Oh. I see. Right. Okay. Yeah, and I know that joke was probably used as all, but you can't not talk about at least the first two commercials without mentioning that all three of these commercials were raps about Zelda, like an actual rap, like someone sat down and rapped and made the music and did all this other, like, what kind of weirdo and cringe lord or whatever will decide to sit down, write an entire rap song about a Zelda, which is a medieval thing where rap wasn't even invented at the time, and it just wasn't, like, it doesn't fit at all. It's just them summarizing the game, and shut up. You know that Smosh songs back in the day were like peak and stuff. By the way, they're still making songs, and they actually did make a song with Baby No Money called Submissive and Breedable. Just wanted to mention that because Smosh got back together after many years, and that excites me because I like it, and I found out Baby No Money was actually pretty cool. So, yeah. But yeah, Nintendo and Sega during the whole start of the first console war. Anyway, we're gonna move on to the next section.
Oh. Okay, I think I fixed the connection. That was weird. Well, I'm pretty sure they're now in the description for anyone who wants to see what they have to say about random goofy gaming topics. But anyways, with that out of the way, I think that's a perfect transition into the edgy ads. Alright, so this segment is likely going to be the longest here, as a ton of ads from this older era focused on a mix of, quote, cool kid imagery, extremely sexual themes, and effectively telling over half the world population to go and fuck off. On that note, let's actually talk about those kinds of ads. In fact, one of the biggest companies to hop on the trend of gaming for men is, ironically enough, Nintendo. Yes. The same Nintendo that is known for being the most widely available, inclusive, and family-friendly gaming companies out there. Trust me, we'll be touching on that family-friendly bit there in just a little bit, don't worry about that. Now, I think it's obvious that they didn't start off that way, given their history, and especially in the gaming scene, they created a myriad of ads like this. Ah, yes. Keep it in your pants. A slogan that speaks very simply as to what it is very much implying here. You see, not only did Nintendo bank off of marketing towards men and men alone, but they also implied that those who are in this Game Boy crowd were also people who were too invested in playing their games to care about being interested in any kind of romantic or even sexual partnership. In fact, here's another example of it, where we see a couple in bed and the man is too busy playing on the Game Boy Advance SP to notice the woman beside him. What I find extremely funny is the tagline here of, the second best thing to do in the dark. I guess if they're admitting that laying pipe is more entertaining than playing the Game Boy, fuck if I know. You know, how about a slight palate cleanser before getting into the really raunchy ones, because trust me, it only goes downhill from here, so I might as well at least give you something here. How about this one? This seems to follow a similar pattern to the previous one where the man is too distracted by the pixels on his screen than his current date, but at least this one seems to be mainly focusing on what would ultimately be the demographic for this device: teenagers. And what makes it even funnier is the tagline of Escape. I genuinely don't even think the messaging could get any more blatant than that. That is, wow. Okay, now back to the raunchiness. This ad. My God, I feel like I don't even have to explain this one too much given the previous examples, but this one just ups the ante by getting seriously kinky while also stating that this isn't even enough to grab the man's attention. There's so much to dissect with this ad, but the thing is that if I were to do so, this would at least stretch out the segment by 5 minutes longer than it really needs to be. Okay, let's take a break from Nintendo and talk about their primary rival, Sega. You see, Sega back in the day had a bit of a reputation of being on the edgier side, trying to do their best to display to the world that Sega was for the cool kids and Nintendo was for the babies. To give an example, they published this magazine ad in GamePro to advertise the Sega Saturn. Yes, we're starting off with an immediate punch to the face with this one because... oh my God, just look at this one. In case you didn't notice, there's a beautiful naked woman on this page. Definitely taking a similar route to Nintendo by addressing their target demographic as a bunch of horny losers who are also too entranced by the gameplay to care about the barely censored nudity on display. Oddly enough, and you're gonna be very surprised by this one, despite this era focusing on borderline objectifying women at almost every single turn, this ad was so controversial that it caused GamePro to receive tons of hate mail and threats of subscription cancellations, effectively meaning that airing this Sega Saturn ad almost collapsed an entire fucking magazine publisher. I want you guys to think about that one. During a day and age in which these kinds of ads are kind of almost commonplace, this is the one that kind of pushed people over the line. I have a few different theories as to why. My main one is, of course, the fact that, well, it's just blatant nudity on display, whereas at least the other ones can at least kind of get away with it by at least kind of using, oh, they're at least somewhat covered up for the most part. This one was just nudity that was barely censored by the gameplay, which is just fucking wild to me. In fact, I probably have to do some extra censoring here to make sure that the video doesn't get fucking nuked from orbit. Jesus Christ. Especially considering the fact that some of the ads later are definitely going to be, yikes. Okay, anyways, we're gonna swiftly move along because I know if I show that ad for any longer, this video is gonna be nuked from orbit no matter how much censorship I do. How about another Sega ad? Oh, fuck off. Which pair will be bigger on the beach? Good gods alive, this one is as subtle as a car crash, isn't it? I think the funniest part about this ad is that it's advertising Sonic 1 and 2, which is a game that looked like this, I should mention. Speaking of Sonic, this ad for Sonic 1. You know, there's a very easy joke I can make here, but I won't for the sake of remaining somewhat original.
That's right, this is what you get! My super laser pimp!
Okay, anyways, on to the next Sega ad. Oh, come on! Okay, can we please move on from the sexual stuff? Okay, fine, whatever. Now, the one thing that you probably noticed with a lot of these ads compared to the first Sega ad is, of course, the style here. You see, these ads were not only published in an adult humor magazine, but these are published without Sega's knowledge or consent. In fact, once it was discovered that these ads were even published, Sega immediately jumped on the people who fucking published these ads, and, well, they probably no longer work at Sega anymore. What I find funny is that an ad showing a nude woman's bazonga is barely censored by the Saturn port of Mortal Kombat is okay, but an ad making jokes comparing a joystick to tugging your meat is apparently too far. Weird how that works. You know what? One more odd Sega ad campaign to really seal this joke, of course, is these. Yeah, now I'm wondering why the jack-off jokes never really passed when ads like these were made. Okay, let's start easing into the edgy side here with this ad for Klonoa, where they talk about it like it's some kind of STD for some fucking reason. And the best part about this ad, the one that I find unreasonably funny, is that on the other page right here, there's a reason why I haven't showed the second part of this ad yet. On the other page is a small picture of the character in question, which just displays how out of place this kind of ad was for this game in question. Just look at this fucking thing. Okay, here's another example to ease us into the edges. Of course, this ad for Crash Bandicoot, where our boy Crash here commits a bit of trespassing to shill his game right on Nintendo's front lawn.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
It's not really edgy per se, but of course it really is just kind of more or less selling that idea of Sega's for the cool kids that are not afraid to commit a little crime and robbery here and there. Or I guess in this case it's just trespassing on random people's property in order to shill for a platforming game. You know what? Here's another example of these kinds of, you know, edgier type ads, which is of course the ad campaigns for the Atari Jaguar. You see, Atari was on a bit of a downward spiral during this time. They were never able to surpass the 2600, and they had canceled consoles in the dozens. If you really want to know a lot more about, like, the history of, like, Atari's rise and its embarrassing fucking downfall that happened very swiftly after the 2600, I recommend watching this video by Melody No Surname. It's a genuinely good video, genuinely hilarious and very informative, and definitely helped out with at least this particular section and the eventual reveal of what actually caused this entire ad campaign for the Jaguar to basically fail so spectacularly, aside from the obvious. Well, anyways, Atari was barely in the running in the console market during this time, and in order to try and compete, they released a Jaguar with ads containing tons of yelling,
Which is more advanced?
immense insecurity.
You want games? Jaguar's got fast 3D 64-bit games. You want slow, flat games? No. Slow is for turtles, flat is for boards, fast and 3D is for games.
And calling their clientele dundershits for not buying their fucking console when they advertised it as the first 64-bit console.
Sega Genesis is 16 bits. 3DO is 32 bits. The Atari Jaguar is 64 bits. Which is more advanced? Clifford!
Yes, this was during the Bit Wars, a time in which people thought that more bits meant a better console, and fortunately, it was the release of the Jaguar that started the end of this stupid debate, as it was not only a bad console with like 10 games, but also this ugly piece of shit wasn't even an actual 64-bit console. It had two 32-bit processors, which they just called it 64 bits in order to sell the fucking console, and it was this console that showed that bits really just didn't matter at the end of the day. I'm just glad that we don't have any stupid gaming debates nowadays that's as stupid as the Bit Wars. Okay, anyways, we're gonna move on from that one and sharpen the edge a little bit with this ad for Donkey Kong Land. If these aren't the coolest graphics, then my name isn't Yawiga Kanawi. Yeah, I don't think I have to explain why this one is horrible, do I? Anyways, moving on. Okay, how about this ad? You know what? Let's play a little bit of a game with this one, okay? What game do you think that this is advertising? I'll give you about, like, 5 seconds to figure it out. You're wrong. It's for Microsoft fucking Flight Simulator. Yeah, I think what you know we're about to go into. The shock value ad. You see, a couple of ads relied on shock value in order to sell their product. To give a bit of a smaller example, this ad, that's also for the Sega Saturn, also seems to be vaguely related to the events of September 11th. But one game that truly did not give a fuck when it came to the amount of edge in their ads was Command & Conquer. If you need an example, let's take a look at this one. Paint the town red. What I find fascinating about this ad is that it came out before the events of 9/11, making it one of the 2 games that accidentally predicted the event, for better or for worse. Okay, let's leave the topic of terrorism and move on to another Command & Conquer ad. Nothing sells the idea of a real-time strategy game like a picture of a rally in 1930s Germany. Okay, well, one more to seal the deal. Oh, for fuck's sake, Command & Conquer. Are you trying to get this video nuked from orbit? Okay, let's end this segment with 3 more ads that somewhat perfectly encompass this segment. Let's first start off with this ad for Duke Nukem 3D. If you don't play Duke Nukem 3D, you like men. Okay, this ad is indescribably funny to me because not only has it been turned into more of a shitpost in recent years, but also because this ad was made with 100% seriousness. As one of the resident man lovers in this particular sphere that I found myself in, I just find this ad as like one of the funniest things ever. And I think you can kind of see why. Just fucking look at this. This is hilarious. And if you don't think so, then I'm sorry, but your sense of humor is not as good as mine, and you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, let's quickly talk about one of the most infamous ads in not just video game advertisement history, but also in video game history in general. John Romero's about to make you his bitch. Oh boy. This one has a bit of a history behind it. This is an ad for Daikatana, one of the 3 games for John Romero's company, Ion Storm. For all 3 of you who don't know who John Romero is, he's the mind behind 3 of the most influential shooter games of the era: Wolfenstein, Quake, and Doom. No, that's the wrong Doom. Okay, there we go. Now, this ad is horrible for a few reasons. Reason 1 is, well, I think it's kind of obvious. Claiming that you're about to bitchify your audience isn't exactly the badass claim that you think it is. Reason number 2 is the fact that, well, Daikatana ended up failing compared to the other 2 games released around that time from the same company. Duke Nukem 3D, which is funny how things kind of end up looping around, huh? And Deus fucking Ex. And then finally, and what really seals the deal as this being one of the worst ads ever created, at least during this particular time in my opinion, is the fact that John Romero didn't even want to make this ad in the first place, and now regrets having done so. And now let's round off this segment of the try-hard ads. And in order to do so, we have possibly one of the most infamous ads of the last 10 years.
Hey, you, looking at the screen. Let me ask you a question. Do you like awesome things that are awesome? Then you gotta play this game, dude. It's friggin' cool and crazy addictive, like popping bubble wrap addictive.
Oh yeah, this ad. This ad for the Mega Man spin-off, Mighty No. 9, is possibly one of the pinnacles of trying too hard to be cool and quirky. Let me give you a couple of examples from just this particular ad if that intro didn't already sell you enough on, well, this entire concept.
See, that's your dash move. There's a short dash, a long dash, jump dash, spiral, slide. There's probably a dash that makes you breakfast. I don't know.
Great idea. Wait, what?
Point is, you're dashing around like a friggin' moon man, and I love it. Oh, and look at this. There's all these combo moves you can do. Then you can do combos on combos to rack up your score. And I know you like that combo on combo action.
Oh, Jesus. Combo on combo action. I think you can see why this is in this section of the video now, huh? I could probably do an entire commentary video on this trailer alone, but honestly, I only need to play this last bit to really seal the deal.
But I saved the best for last. Absorption boost. You kill an enemy, and you can absorb their power-ups. Stuff that'll make you faster and stronger, and make the bad guys cry like an anime fan on prom night.
Okay, I'm just gonna be dead honest. What the fuck does this even mean? I can only imagine how the VA for this trailer ended up feeling after seeing the sales numbers of this game, as well as the backlash that this trailer had on release. But I think with that confusion out of the way, and just how perplexing this ad truly ended up ending on, I think it's a perfect segue into the confusing ads. As we near the end of this video, we get more and more daring to the point where most people would ask, what the hell were you even trying to advertise here? To give a slight example of this, let's return to Ratchet & Clank, which was featured, well, pretty early on in this video. But more specifically, the ads for Ratchet & Clank from overseas. As per usual, whenever it comes to the Japanese, a lot of their ads pretty much rely on some pretty unusual imagery, and probably the most unusual out of all of them is, of course, portraying Ratchet as some sort of master of espionage akin to James Bond or the Hitman from the Hitman series. I swear I remember his name, I'm just blanking on it as of recording this, and my editor is probably going to be putting in what that character's name is on screen to make me look stupid. But I feel like I should probably just at least mention that this particular ad is again for Ratchet & Clank, the original one, which I should mind you, from all the research and gameplay that I tried to look up for this game, is a game in which, well, stealth is exceedingly optional, to put it very simply. So optional to the point where there's probably no stealth segments at all within the game. I could be wrong, but this ad completely misrepresents the game in general. You see, the main aim of the confusing section is, of course, ads that not only make you question what was even being advertised, but also completely misrepresent the product and the intended audience. Here's another example. No, this is not deleted footage of 2013's World War Z, but is actually an ad for the PlayStation 2. I feel like I don't have to explain why this ad is confusing, as it actually just reminds me of Black Friday, the last 3 days before Christmas. Basically any major holiday. At this point, I'm just listing off various holidays that cause a lot of people to pile into any nearby retail store because I work in retail. You get the point. I guess what it could be saying is that the PS2 is just so unbelievably awesome that it causes everybody within a 1,000-mile radius to immediately crowd towards and damn near destroy the local malls to get their hands on even just one of the PlayStation 2s. But again, it's just another turnoff for me and just makes me want to buy an Xbox instead. Speaking of Xbox, this commercial for the original Xbox showing a baby getting rocketed out of the maternity ward and experiencing its entire life go by in 30 seconds. I didn't even bother to try and build up that one. I'm just gonna let you know immediately what was going on there. Probably the only part that saves it from being so horrifying that it shouldn't even be in this section is honestly the comedy factor of the old man getting slam dunked into his own grave. I mean... Nice car! I don't know why, I just find it really funny. Okay, let's go back to ads that are less body horror. How about these ads for the Game Boy SP Tribal Edition, where we not only have a showcase of some random motherfucker covered in tattoos, but also this ad showing Mario with his sleeves rolled up like a tough guy to show off a tribal tattoo. Not only is the first one just really confusing and mildly disturbing, but the second one just makes you laugh when you remember that Mario would be sounding like this while showing something like this off. Mamma mia! Take a look at my tribal tattoo, Luigi! God, that was a fucking terrible impression. You know what, I'm keeping it in. Okay, continuing on the Game Boy trend, how about this ad? You know what, as a ferret owner, this is just scary and confusing. How the fuck was this meant to sell a Game Boy? Okay, back on the topic of misrepresenting the game, how about Earthbound? By far one of the biggest inspirations for some of the most influential indie games of the modern day was, of course, a game that was literally just a goofy little RPG game about kids with psychic powers preparing to fight a god. Okay, I know that narrows down the JRPG scene down very little, but you know what I'm talking about, alright? However, when Earthbound got translated and ported overseas, the advertisements for this game, for some unknown reason, decided to portray the game as a game that literally stinks. Yeah, not only is this a complete misrepresentation of the game at its core, I mean, just read the first few sentences, but many fans actually attribute this ad to being one of the main reasons why the game was never really a hit when it arrived. And to be honest, I can kind of see why. If a game is literally being advertised as it stinks, which is of course a bit of a synonym of it sucks, then who the fuck is going to play your game, to be honest? Okay, let's round this one off with an ad for the PlayStation Vita. You see, for those who don't already know, I actually have a PlayStation Vita. Well, technically I have two. I have the original, and I have a slim version. Now, one of these I know doesn't function anymore because the internal screen is completely busted, and the other one, I genuinely have no idea if it still functions because I lost the charger for it about 3 years ago. Now, the one gimmick that the PlayStation Vita had compared to its more successful predecessor is the back touchscreen. Now, as someone that owned and used the Vita back in the day, this gimmick was, well, exactly that. It was a gimmick that was not only just barely functional, but also, in my opinion, just caused too many issues and is one of the many blunders of Sony's consoles. And of course, it's really not that much of a surprise as to why this console was never really that popular. Now, how did Sony advertise this gimmick to the masses? Excuse me for 1 second. As we reach the end of our tour of video game advertising madness, we of course have to end it off with the ads that are just, damn near incomprehensible. Thankfully in this section there aren't too many, but it's mainly because of the nature of these ads being not just confusing, but also just genuinely fucking horrifying. To somewhat ease us in, we have this ad for the Game Boy Color, which advertises the different variations of this handheld console by representing them as concerningly different colored tongues. I mean, Jesus Christ, I wasn't expecting the Freak Boy pocket. I'm never making a joke like that ever again. Not only are they in different colors, with the transparent one being represented by the most diseased tongue ever seen, but are also in different, sometimes inhuman lengths. I have no idea who thought that this abomination that is only reminding me of Terraria's Wall of Flesh was a good advertisement, but consider me turned away from the Game Boy. Alright, anyways, keeping with the Nintendo theme, we have this commercial.
We are Nintendo Ultimate TV Game System. We challenge all players. You cannot beat us.
What the fuck? Okay, so this ad is already confusing enough. I mean, let's be honest here. Most of you who are regulars on this channel may remember these polygonal recreations of mostly well-known Nintendo characters from the hit indie game Kanye Neem Wait for a Bus.
Why am I hearing Stained Brutal fucking Calamity?
However, I just have to ask, who the fuck are these two? I can recognize Bowser and the Duck Hunt dog, but who are these fuckers? Can someone honestly fill me in? I also just want you guys to put yourself in the shoes of, like, some kid that's, like, you know, scrolling through different channels or, like, watching their favorite cartoon. They go to an ad break, and then they hit you with this imagery.
World, you cannot beat us.
This is something that would probably cause multiple visits to the therapist for. But, you know, I will say that this ad does at least do one thing right, and that is, of course, saying that you can't beat Nintendo. Because I feel like if I had to play one more Nintendo ad within this video, they'd try to hit me with some sort of insane frivolous lawsuit, all because they're primarily stationed within a country that doesn't know what fair use is. So let's keep from getting sued and slightly give a breather in between terrifying ads with this one.
$60? This game sucks! They screwed me! It's exactly the same game! $50? Oh! They did it to me again! I could've bought!
Okay, first, I can agree that Call of Duty has become a major slop franchise, but not enough to perform a Mortal Kombat fatality on myself over. But second, I want you guys to try and make a wild guess as to what this ad is for, because I guarantee you, you'll not be able to guess. Yep, it's for the failed Kickstarter console, the Ouya. And I genuinely think that this ad is probably one of the many reasons why it failed, to be completely honest, because who the fuck would want to play this piece of soggy brick right here after literally watching a man kill himself over the fact that he purchased Call of Duty? But anyways, now it's time for the final two. These two I've saved for last as they fully encompass the nature of this section. And I don't really have any way to build any of these up, so roll the first one. What on God's green fucking earth? That's probably what went through your head at the moment, right? Yeah, same here. This infamous ad for the PlayStation 3 is one of many genuinely incomprehensible ads that Sony pushed to advertise their home consoles. And honestly, this ad is probably one of the most well-known because it was shown on TV at some point. I mean, let's put it this way. When I was searching up just weird ads, there was an entire dedicated playlist to showcasing weird as fuck ads for the PlayStation 3, and I just needed to only choose like a handful of them because there were so many that were just genuinely batshit fucking insane. But I just have a few questions when it comes to this ad. Why is there a baby doll in a sensory deprivation chamber? Why is it experiencing non-flashbacks when looking at the PlayStation 3? Let's be honest, who the fuck honestly knows? Because I certainly don't. But this ad pales in comparison to the ad made exclusively for a website made to promote the PlayStation, and it has the ominous title of Head, which probably gives you next to no context as to what is even going to happen within this ad. And let's be honest, that's really all the context that you need for this one. Roll it. You know, now I'm glad that my PlayStation 3 stopped functioning now. I have genuinely nothing clever to say. For once I'm at a loss for words. Let's just get to the conclusion. So, the history of wild gaming ads is certainly expansive. Even though what we've covered here is likely only a mere fraction of the crazy ads of yesteryear, it is certainly a lot to digest and process. I mean, hell, it's not even just gaming that this is localized to, as even just regular-ass ads for regular products can get bizarre. You know, that could be a good sequel. Whatever. But despite these kinds of ads for more AAA-style games having fallen out of fashion, indie games have taken up the mantle of crazy marketing and silliness abound, with New Blood promoting a port of Dusk with a poor edit of the console that they're promoting this port of, overlaying another console that they also ported the game to, and Celeste making a 3D N64-style game to promote the game last year. It's likely that these wacky ads and marketing campaigns will never truly leave us. They'll just get more refined. And you know, I think that that's pretty damn cool.